Welcome to the Creative Warriors Podcast, the female heart and soul of photography. All right, we are welcoming back Susan Magnano. She does photo education and she specializes in night and landscape photography. We have enjoyed our last few weeks with you, and we can't wait to dig into some of the hard stuff, talking about the voice of doubt and some of those inner struggles that we all share. So, can you share a time when you struggled with self-doubt and imposter syndrome in your photography work?
Wow, you really know how to go deep.
I just dig right in there.
Well, I feel like the nagging thought is always like, am I good enough? Do I know enough? And I think it's what drives me forward is the thirst to improve. I feel like my self-doubt is actually like a motivator. Like, okay, I don't know. It's like, okay, Susan, if you don't feel comfortable, then you need to become more confident. So you need to learn more. So it's always kind of like a chain reaction of when I feel that insecurity, I have this thirst to know more, and then I have to act on that. So it's kind of my little chain of reaction. This happened when I started teaching. I mentioned it in the first episode. I didn't feel like I knew enough. Did I know a lot? Sure. And when they started asking me to speak, again, that self-doubt kicked in. And I was asked to speak on light painting, which was an honor. It was my passion. But secretly, I knew there are a lot more advanced light painters out there than I was. Thankfully, they didn't know them. Just kidding. I was like, okay, well, if they don't know them, they know me. It's going to work out fine. But it was great to be able to speak on a topic that I felt so passionate about, and that's what made it easier. But again, it's that fear of failure or screwing up or like missing out on a huge opportunity that kind of holds us all back. And I feel it all the time. And I have to say, every couple months, I'm sitting on a fit of fear. Like I'm like, okay, they've asked me to do something else that's outside my comfort zone. But I know that in those moments, those are the moments of the most growth. Like, okay, I'm going to do a presentation on a stage. Okay, now I'm going to be on a main stage. Like, what? Do they know who I am? But then I have to say, rise to the occasion, Susan. Work on your confidence, and it's come with some coaching. I didn't do it all on my own. Of course, I practice and I rehearse and I listen to lots of YouTube channels and podcasts about speaking. This is just out of my wheelhouse completely. I felt really uncomfortable, but a goal of mine would be to do a TED Talk. Like I've done it a couple times now, just regular talks. And I'm like, wow, imagine if you could get to that level. And that's always what I'm striving for, is to be able to talk about something with such clarity that, a big audience would like to listen to. And I've reached that in a couple platforms, but every time I have a pang of nervousness, of fear. And I feel like you need to go towards those fears, because if you don't, then you're never growing. And I feel like that's been a huge transformation for me, is to embrace the fear, move towards it, practice, rehearse, and plan, and then conquer it.
Really good advice in that. Oh my goodness. Do you have in this process, absolutely beautiful advice, but do you have self-doubt or negative self-talk, I'll put it that way, that might be stemmed from some, the way you were raised or whatever, but it's still there. Mm-hmm. And you have to kind of shut up on occasion. Do you have to just say, look, brain, you're wrong. I'm doing this. Do you have some kind of a inner chatter that you have to fight?
I think that's a great question. And the answer is yes. I think we are our worst critics. Like my partner says to me, why are you so hard on yourself? And it's true. Like I'll just come out with these things. If something didn't go right, I'll think, why didn't I see that in advance? Why didn't I prepare better? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? And like he says, why are you so hard on yourself? And I would never say any of those things to anyone else, but we'll say it to ourselves. It's awful. And I really am trying to work on it. I do have a lot of negative thoughts in my head about just how I could be better and all these kind of things that we all think about ourselves. And the way I conquer it is I try and see every failure as a lesson and know that this is how we get better. And the way to become an expert or to not have so much self-doubt is to fail a bunch of times so you can learn the quickest way to succeed. So I feel like as much as when I doubt or I have negative talk, say, okay, that's enough. That's not helping the scenario. And I even asked my partner, I said, what do you do when you are struck, like struck so hard by like such a pang of like maybe feeling guilty or knowing that you could have done something better? He says, like my partner lost his drone. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, how are you not beating yourself up right now?" Like went off and I was like, he was like, "Oh, like if it was me, I'd be like, why did I do this?" All these things. And he didn't say one dang thing. And I go, "Why are you not like, why are you so like fine about it?" And he just said, "It's not going to help. It's not going to bring the drone back. It's not going to help anything." And I was like, it's so true. Like a lot of this negative self-talk that we do actually isn't helping anything. It's actually making things worse. So if you could acknowledge that and then flip it around and say, okay, instead of saying I'm the worst or I don't know anything, say, okay, I didn't know that, but how can I flip the coin and say I will know for next time and I will prepare better and things will turn out better next time. So you need to kind of do a reversal. Once you've gone through the pity party, we've all been there, you have to say enough of this abuse. I don't deserve this. I'm ready to feel better about myself. Take a deep breath and change the flow.
Nice. Did he ever find his drone? Sorry.
No, but we have insurance, so it was okay. The drone lost signal, it happens,
Yeah.
and then it never returned. So, if that was my drone, I would have been so angry. I lost like a lens cap and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I lost that lens cap," and I do these things over like minuscule things that aren't going to change the world, not like a $3,000 drone. So,
Yeah, camera fell off a tripod once. That wasn't good.
did it work again?
Well, believe it or not, it did. It just bounced off the lens hood. And I was like, thank goodness for lens hoods.
I know. Actually, it wasn't the lens cap I lost, it was the lens hood. So that'll be a little bit more significant replacement, but still not a drone. So it's all the things that you have to say, okay, is this worth ruining this moment for? Is it worth ruining this moment for? So you have to accept that something terrible has happened or didn't go as planned or it's not exactly right in this moment. But you have to look at the positive and say, is it fixable? Did someone die? Hopefully not. And then say, okay, none of those things happened. It's fixable. We'll fix it. And then you have to say, let's start working towards the positive and get out of the negative.
Yeah, I think you identify something that's important, which is the emotion takes energy.
Yeah.
And if we are using it or feeding the negative energy inside of our brains, then we don't have the energy we need to do the other things.
Mm-hmm.
So letting go of that negative energy and kind of shutting it up or quieting it, however you succeed, or changing the language we use in our own self-talk allows us to have that energy now for other greater things.
Yeah, that's really well said.
Which is really nice when you have energy for the good stuff, right?
Right. Because then you can be the problem fixer. You can be the problem solver. You can realize that wasn't such a big problem to begin with. And then you realize you're not a terrible person and everything's right in the world. So once you get out of that dark side, you can enter the light side again.
Yeah. And, sometimes we have to stop and look. When you're climbing up a mountain and you're looking at the summit, and you're like, oh my God, I have so much work to do. But sometimes you just got to stop and look back and see how far you've come. And that is like another perspective that's very valuable when you're dealing with self-talk, because if you acknowledge that you still have a way to go, and that's okay. Because you want to get to the top. You have that goal, you want to get there. But if you look back every once in a while and you say, you know what, look how far I've come, then that allows you to build up your self-confidence, your belief in yourself. You see the results of all that hard work, and your journey looks beautiful, and you get to stop and enjoy it, right?
I like that. Definitely. Take a deep breath, realize all those steps you just took. Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Good stuff. So, have you ever faced rejection in your career?
Mm.
So
I
the
think
question
definitely.
is, because I know you probably have you ever submitted for something and didn't get
Right.
it?
Sure, totally. There's totally been lots of rejection, whether I didn't nail a job that I really wanted, or, somebody ghosted me, like, oh, we're gonna do this job together, it's gonna be great. And then you don't ever hear from them again. And you have to say, okay, it wasn't meant to be. And rejection is hard because you can take it a couple different ways. You can take it personally, or you could just take it for what it was. It wasn't a good fit. So it's the personal one that hurts the most. Like, oh, they don't like me. It's not like they don't like you. Maybe they loved you. Maybe it was your work, or maybe it wasn't a right fit for what their plans were. So I'd say whenever faced with rejection, just try to say it wasn't me. It was not the right fit.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to business.
Right.
Personal is another set of situations, but when it comes to business, it is often a business decision that's
Right.
being made. So it is about fitting, not about the person's value or worth. It's all about being a good fit for whatever they're trying to accomplish. So that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Excellent. So when do you ever have creative blocks? Like
I
where
do.
you literally, I mean, we get in funks, you talked about that before, but you like, I don't even want to pick up a camera. I have no desire. Do you ever get in that space or not really?
No, I have, when I'm just like, okay, I need a break from this, or, I was tasked to do something that I wasn't comfortable with, and then I create a block around it. So this is an example. I was asked to do a photo walk at the New England Camera Club conference. So they said, why don't you do it on long exposure photography? And I was like, well, what do we have to photograph during the day? It was like bright day. I was like, oh, I could show filters, yeah, but like, what do you have that's moving? So in my mind, I already had thought, what would I show? I'd show water movement. I show clouds movement. It was like a college park, like a college square. So there really wasn't a lot. And there was a lake, but you couldn't actually see the water. So in my mind, I was panicking. I was like, how am I going to teach long exposure photography if I have nothing moving? There's nothing to capture. So already I had set myself for failure. So when the morning came, there was no clouds, there was no moving water, so I was just talking about what long exposure photography was, and I was like, "All right, guys, let's just set up the camera, we'll put on the filters," and then accidentally, I moved the camera during the exposure, and then I go, "Oh my god, intentional camera blur." I could have been teaching that the whole time, and we did a couple really creative shots at the end of the class, but I kick myself for not thinking past the wall I'd set up on what to showcase, because I had in my mind, these are what you teach for long exposure photography. And that was exactly what I needed to showcase. What I would love to show is how to create really unique abstract pictures. And it came to me at the end. So for me, I say when I have a block, you need to put the block aside and think there's definitely a way to overcome this. You just need to think harder and think outside of the expectations. And that was a big lesson for me to change my mindset.
It's funny because as soon as you said that was what I thought of was ICM, and I was about to ask you if you do ICM because
Yeah,
that's
I love
obviously.
doing it. So that was like even funnier. I was like, what the heck, Susan? Why were you so stuck on having the clouds moving and the water moving when you could have just been doing this? And, everyone had a good time at the end of it, but I had spent a good majority of the time talking about the things we should have been photographing but didn't have in front of us. It was just funny that I was like, man, open up your mind, girl. Open
Yeah,
it
but
up.
think how good you'll do the next time, right?
Exactly.
Ex-
Exactly. Again, a lesson learned.
Those are priceless lessons. Upgrade your experience with our premium subscription. Enjoy exclusive features, enhanced content, and seamless extended interviews. Elevate your enjoyment and personal growth with our premium subscription today. If you enjoy the Creative Warrior podcast, the female heart and soul of photography, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Thank you.
Sure.
And usually the ones that you It's funny that the hardest lessons sometimes are the ones that you never forget. The ones that took so long to overcome. You're like, okay, well, that's not something I will ever forget.
Right.
And
Right.
it becomes very clear in your head when you learn that lesson. Sometimes we have to beat our head against the wall a few times before we get there, but that's okay too, right?
Hopefully you only have to beat it one time before you learn the lesson.
I'm afraid I've had to do things a few times, but that's okay. I still get it in the end, right?
Sure. As long as you learn it on the third or fourth time, that's all good.
Yes, yes, absolutely. What about new techniques? Okay, so when you were learning or when you were switching from one genre to another, or you were so you're going in a world that you don't feel confident in. Um, what were some of the techniques or the things that you do to just say, I'm going to learn this and I'm going to go all in? And what do you do personally?
Right. So I feel this way about a lot of things. Anytime I'm approaching a new subject of teaching, like I'm trying to learn how to do incorporate AI in my photography. So for me, it's like, let me inundate myself with all the information I could find online because I want to become the expert. So I'm going to watch YouTube videos. I'm going to read articles. I'm going to see how other photographers are exploring it. And that is my technique. And I feel like it's such a beautiful place to be at the beginning of your journey because you have so much to gain. And I always love teaching people who are brand new in photography because they have the most gain. Like, oh my gosh, you have so much to learn and I have so much to show you. It's the people who know a lot and think they know everything. They're the worst students because they think they know everything. So I feel like whenever I'm at a point where I'm like, oh gosh, I'm about to step into a world that's unfamiliar, I try and open up my mind and then I try and seek out people who are experts in the field so I can feel more comfortable and also learn quicker, learn the quickest I can from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you made a really good point about, different phases and I hope most of the people I know are like yourself, where they very much they enjoy the seeking and the learning. So they don't, there was a book and it mentioned being an amateur in life. And I've heard a few other photographers use that term. They choose to be an amateur, which means you're always gaining knowledge and
Mhm. That's
you're
good.
just on that journey, right? It's not a destination. But when you're, and when you're out when you're teaching and you have the different um, types of students and you get one that is um, the know-it-all, maybe, I don't know, I know
Sure.
everything. I was on a workshop where we had one of those with us, and it was challenging for the other attendees, but it was also challenging for the instructor. So what are some techniques that you do to deal with those? This kind of throwing this one in there, but because you
Sure.
mentioned it, but those more challenging personalities. Trying to say that
So
politely.
that happens, which is bound to happen. I'm probably could have been a challenging personality at some point in my life. We all probably could have been. But when that happens, I try and say, like, hey, I'm so grateful you're here and you're here to learn. I see the way you're doing this, whatever it is that they're doing. Are you open to learning a different technique? And most of the time, if you phrase it like that, they'll say, of course, I'm paid a lot of money to be here. I have to be open. But if you say, hey, why don't you do it like this? They're like, oh, no, no, I have my method. I already know that. But you say, are you open to learning a new way to do something that you're doing? And then they can be receptive to it or they can't, but you're approaching it in a way that's inviting and not just sharing because they want to know that they know everything. So it's all about technique of transferring knowledge. There's a lot of ways to do it. I'm still learning other ways, but just sharing knowledge in a way that could be more well received is an art in itself.
Yeah, it is. And there's, millions of books on the subject too, how to deal with difficult personalities and various other things. So, it's obviously a struggle in multiple different worlds, but so it was neat to hear your perspective on that. That was very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So what about stressors? Do you have any, have you ever had to make like, you mentioned COVID, I think earlier, and you talked about that put everything on a pause, but sometimes there's other things in life. COVID was a huge one for a lot of us. Um, which caused a great deal of stress. You didn't know whether the money was going to come in. You haven't, like now, say you have a workshop, you released it, you've already agreed to the venue, and you're only sold, 3 out of 10 or whatever it might be. So that's a stressor,
Mhm.
oh, is this going to work? How do I market? You start to thinking all those things start coming up. How do you deal with those moments?
I can't say I deal with them all in a great way. I feel like I'm still learning how to deal with stress in a more calm and efficient way. I typically like to take a couple deep breaths and say, okay, this is going to be a situation. I need to get more marketing. Let's say it was to fill up something. Let me use all my resources. So I kind of go back and say, well, this is my newsletter. This is my channels that I've presented on. Like you just start going through problem solving. Like I start becoming a problem solving wizard. And I say, okay, this is the problem. Here's 3 things I need to do today to plant seeds to make it work. So it's like, okay, so the problem is we need more people to sign up. How do we get more people to sign up? Well, to speak to more people. So then, okay, who can I speak for? Who can I share this with? Who can I talk to? And then I just start planting little seeds like, hey, are you interested in this? And then I talk to different organizations. And then I start doing these kind of things where I put myself in front of more people and I break down a problem and I try and find little steps to try and fix it. It may not fix the whole problem right away, but it's taking those little baby steps to get to in the right direction or diffuse the situation to buy me more time.
Now, we haven't really talked about this, I don't believe too much, but I know a lot of photographers have mentors or fellow photographers that are professional that may be in a different part in their journey, and they have really helped them to kind of navigate through whatever problem they happen to be facing. Is that something that you have incorporated in your photography life?
I have to say, I had a lot of mentors starting in this field. I feel very blessed. Like, just when I started out doing weddings and events, I second shot under a lot of fantastic photographers who took me under their wings and showed me what they learned. And even like, I did a lot of internships in college working for other people. So for me, I was always a sponge. Whoever I worked with, I'd say, let me see how you do this so I can learn from you. Now I love to do the same for other people. Like if I can show you guys how to be a better portrait photographer or landscape photographer, I love to be a good mentor and pass it forward. Eric Perret, are you familiar with Eric Perret?
I've heard the name, but I can't put a face to it right now. So
He's an amazing light painter who started doing these light paintings with a tube, basically a plastic tube from the hardware store with a flashlight in it. And then he does a circle around his beautiful partner, Kim, who's a dancer. They're on
yes,
sand
yes.
dunes.
Okay. Yep.
If you
Okay.
can picture any of this kind of work, it's probably by Eric Perret. So he was my motivation to get into light painting. I thought, wow, if I could create an image like him, that would be amazing. And I signed up for one of his workshops. He was going to be in New York, and I was doing a job in Puerto Rico, and I was flying in the morning, and my flight got canceled, so I missed it. And sent my roommate in my place, and my roommate went and she took the course, and she even FaceTimed me with Eric and Kim, and it was just like this beautiful moment of just saying, oh, okay, like this exists. I learned from my roommate who took the class, and from that point on, like I watched his YouTube videos, and he's so giving with everything, all this knowledge about how he creates his light paintings. And I took that little seedling and I've run with it. Like I'm like, okay, I'm going to incorporate flash. I'm going to do all these different things that aren't like Eric, but they incorporate a lot of his techniques. And there's so many other light painters out there who do really fantastic things. And we all kind of take these little elements of what each other do and incorporate it in our work. What I gathered from Eric the most was I listened to this one interview from him with someone saying, like, aren't you afraid that someone's going to steal what you do and do it better than you? And like he said something to the fact of like, No, because then I could learn from them how to do it better. And I feel like that's the way I feel about what I do too, is like the more I educate people, the more we all grow together. We all rise together. We all become better photographers. So I feel like some photographers covet what they know because they don't want other people to excel or be better than them. And that comes from a place of ego. And I feel like I come from a place of education and sharing so we can all be better. So I'm grateful for those people who inspired me along the way, Eric and my other mentors who taught me what I know, just so I can be at the place where I'm just as giving as they were. So again, we can all grow together.
I figured out where I knew him from. I haven't met him personally, but he did the Out of Olympic.
Oh, he was,
I
yeah,
believe
he
it
was
was last
amazing.
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And just to come full circle with that whole story is Eric reached out to me. He sent me his tubes. He wants me to be an ambassador on his website. And I just say, wow, like to come like that full circle and just be like, thank you for acknowledging me. And I want to thank you for like spawning this journey. You know, I think we all kind of have that person or the inspiration that has set us loose on our journey. And we all take it in different directions. So it's nice to have that come full circle.
yeah. I think one of the great things about the community as an industry, and there might be exceptions to this, but I don't pay attention to them. I find most photographers are very willing to share and give. And they don't feel that sense of, well, if I tell you my secrets, then I won't have any business. I mean, I've met a few like that, but very rare. But I just think that's a really neat thing about the whole community is that it's all about, we rise when we lift others. It's sharing and we all get better, not just, it's not just about me, which I
Right.
think is really neat.
Right. I agree.
So, have there ever been any experiences or moments of inspiration that have inspired you in a completely new way or different way in the way you approach your nature photography? I mean,
I
obviously,
think
painting at night is significant, but is there anything else?
so I started using drone light painting. So this has really
Oh,
been like a game
wow.
changer. So the drone has a downward facing light.
Right.
So if you send it up in the air and you say, like, put on the landing light, you can use that as a light source to light paint landscapes. So my last workshop I did in Trona Pinnacles, the pinnacles are fantastic. It looks like you're in Mars, and we're able to create light like kind of like moonlight and side light and all, and put the light source anywhere we want. So I feel like having this tool, and now I've gotten additional lights to put on the bottom of the drone so I can point the light in different directions. Having this type of technology where I can put light anywhere I want is groundbreaking. Like, I just feel
Wow.
like now the saddest part is you can't use a drone everywhere. So I can't do it everywhere. But in the places where you can use a drone, and it's safe to use a drone. It's amazing what you can create. Like it's just, I have been working on creating circles around subjects. I light paint things and it looks just like otherworldly. So now I feel like we've taken it to the next level. Before I was using a flashlight and a light tube on the ground, and now we've taken it into the sky. And we're now creating the sun wherever we want the sun to be, or the moon to be wherever the moon would be. So it's really amazing.
Do you have any of your work out there?
Yeah, I'll share with you some of
Yeah.
those.
Share one of those for this episode's cover, because that would be really neat. Yeah. You must have a license like the 107 or
Yeah.
that was a beast, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Really tough. It's really tough. But,
Yeah.
once you do it, you just have it.
Yeah. I was going for it and I let it, I never finished, but that was just more because the rules changed. Like in September, all the laws shifted and they outmoded my drone. And I just was like, really, this is so much work. So I haven't upgraded my drone for new laws, but
Yeah.
I just think it's so neat to be able to see from that perspective.
So
You
I'm
know.
not actually shooting with the drone, just to be clear. I'm
Oh,
using the drone as a light tool. So I'm not actually photographing with the drone. The drone is basically,
you're
I'm
just using it
using,
as a light?
yeah. So I'm
Oh,
shooting with my camera on the ground, and now I'm using the drone to light paint the mountains or to light paint like abandoned car. And I'm creating like these side lights and these above lights and the mountain lights on the
oh my
mountains.
gosh. Like
Yeah,
UFOs happening all over the place.
exactly. Exactly. That's what it looks like in UFO. Totally.
My husband would love that. Maybe I'll talk to him about that. He might think that's totally cool.
Yeah.
Mosquitoes in Florida are ridiculous. So, I mean, it doesn't sound so fun until it gets cold here, but
Hey, when it's cold, I'll come join you. I don't like mosquitoes either, but if it's cold enough, I'll come.
well, they don't like the cold. It doesn't happen very often, but that sounds so fun. Wow, cool. So when you struggle, you find something else to be passionate about or some other angle to make what you're doing even neater. That's what I'm
Totally.
hearing.
Yeah, it's always saying, "Okay, there's a problem here. What can we do to fix it?" And then again, like it took me a minute to come up with it, but then you have to come up with a different angle and say, "Okay, what if we try this?" And I say, "Oh, okay, that works too," and sometimes if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. And then you'll have to resurface when you have the right tools. But you have to just accept it for when the moment's right to keep working at it, and you'll probably find a solution.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Excellent advice. We enjoyed your conversation today. We have one more conversation to happen again. So we're going to close out this episode and we will come back again. And we are going to talk about, I call it the mindful heart and eye, or heart and soul of photography. We're going to get a little deeper into that and what that means to you and how you've made that a part of your practice, or have you or have not. But I know you have based on your work. So anyway, we'll talk about that again next week.
Perfect.
One more question, Susan, before you go. Tell us a little bit more about your workshops.
I lead workshops all around the world. We chase light from sunrise to sunset and even under the stars. And we don't just capture pretty landscapes, we create unique photo experiences. We bring models, we light paint with drones, we teach you how to capture it all, whether you're using your smartphone or the latest and greatest camera. Our workshops have been called a trip of a lifetime, and we like to do workshops that involve everything from daytime photography to nighttime photography. Some of our upcoming workshops include light painting in ghost towns of Nevada, shooting mountains and valleys from the highest refugios in the Dolomites, going on photo safaris in Africa, capturing architecture and cityscapes in New York City, chasing the stars in the Alabama hills and the Eastern Sierras, exploring the castles and churches of Slovenia, chasing the fall colors in Acadia, Maine, and celebrating the New Year in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico. I also lead private tours, so if you ever are interested in going somewhere or learning something special, I lead one-on-one sessions. So if you feel like joining me on an adventure and learning about light painting or photography, reach out to me. My website is photouradventures.com. And on Instagram, you can follow my journey at Susan_Magnano. And I look forward to seeing what you guys create. So thank you guys for joining me. And I hope to see you guys on an adventure.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast, The Creative Warriors, the female heart and soul of photography, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Thank you for listening to the Creative Warriors podcast, the female heart and soul of photography. See you next episode.